Welcome to Seaman's Watch, Episode 2, the U.S. at the Brink. Today, I want to focus on the events of January 6th, specifically related to the storming of the Capitol by domestic terrorists and the role of the president in that event. And I want to talk about the transfer of power and democracy and all of these complex things. um, I was shocked and stunned and profoundly saddened by the events of January 6th. And I want to look at those events and think about what those mean for us going forward, because I think there's a lot at stake here, and I think this is a time to uh, to to think deeply about the future, about the present, about what it means to be an American, and our role within the society and government that exists today. So I want to just dive in and think about what is at stake. I want to think about how fragile our democracy is, and I want uh, to have us think about what our role in that is. As a child, I had an opportunity to live under a dictatorship for about a year. And that event profoundly impacted my life. It impacted my understanding of government and the role of government in people's lives. It impacted my concept of freedom and liberty and equality and justice, and all of those things were profoundly shaped by this childhood experience of living under a dictatorship. We had close people close to our family that were arrested in the middle of the night and put in prison and tortured, and so when I think about the role of government in the lives of people, I am profoundly grateful for the United States and for the country that I've grown up in. And most Americans, I don't think, understand the how different America is than many other countries in the world, and they don't understand what's at stake because, and I guess rightly so, because if you've always grown up with freedom, that's all you've ever known. And so you're likely to think that freedom is just the way the world works. And you won't really see the value in what we have and in what we experience that's different than the rest of the world until it's gone. Once freedom evaporates, once it's taken away, it's seldom replaced with anything better. And so as we think about what's at stake and we think about the challenge to our freedom that we saw in the attempted coup, I think it's really important to just pause and to just let that sink in, that we might not have freedom at some future point, and that we all have a role in protecting that freedom. There are three requirements that I want to postulate that are vital to having a democracy that works. And I want to walk through each of these and talk about where I think we are in each of those. The first one is intelligence. The next one is morality. And then finally, having an informed public that are engaged in the process of democracy. All three of these things are vitally critical to support a democracy and to maintain freedom. First one is intelligence. It's important that the people be able to choose good leaders, and that takes a thorough understanding of what's going on, what's at stake, how to choose leaders that are going to act in the best interest of the country or the city or whatever level of government we're talking about. We get to choose our leaders in a democracy. And so it's very important that people be well informed, that they be intelligent, and that they be able to look at the critical issues and know the difference between what's important and what's not. Over the last, I would say, probably over the last 100 years, there's been a significant shift between a culture of character and a culture of celebrity and personality. And what has happened is we have gone from choosing leaders that are based on their character to form where we choose leaders based on their ability to entertain us. And so the era of sound bites, the era of video clips that are played, 1,000 times a day, the era being able to encapsulate all knowledge and all ideas into a bumper sticker slogan that's kind of the world we live in today. And so we are a society that has been completely dominated by propaganda, and the news sources that we have been so tainted by an entire propaganda engine that is very difficult for us to make intelligent choices. And so this has led to an entire population that have many, many layers of false beliefs and miseducation, and just the outright deceit has left us um, with having a very difficult time just understanding what's true and what's not true. The second issue is one of morality. And for me, the issue of national morality really comes down to equality and inclusion. And these tend to be related to the issue of freedom and justice. And right now in our society, what we have is a culture that holds up one group and in place of all other groups, and desires to make sure that that group is protected. And so this idea of freedom and justice, while we all want freedom and justice, we essentially want it mostly for ourselves, and those things are often withheld from a large portion of the population because they don't look like us or they don't act like us. And so what we've seen over the last few years is a marked rise in nationalism, which is propagated by this idea of America first, that we are the most important nation, and we are, in fact, in many people's minds, we are the only important nation, and everyone else gets the crumbs that drop from the American table. And so this has created a culture of elitism related to class, race, generation, and gender. And so if you're in the preferred race, class, generation, and gender, you're okay. But if you're a minority in that out of that elite group, then you tend to be victimized by the laws and by the economics of our current system. And so wealth and power are really reserved for just a few. And this is a morality issue. This is not an economic issue. This is not an educational issue. This comes down to our morality as a people. And I think if we're really going to survive the next decade or two as Americans, and if we're going to prosper, we're all going to prosper together. And without that inclusion and equality, I think we're doomed to fail. The next thing I want to highlight that's important for a democracy to really work is having an informed public. Good information must be available and digested and used by everyone in the society, or at least a large majority of the people. But right now, we can't distinguish between the lies and truth. We are fed so much misinformation, and we live in these echo chambers where we only hear from people that agree with us, and we can silence everyone else in the system. That if I had to ask, if I was asked, are we an informed public? I just don't think we are. I think we're really suffering in all three of those dimensions. So I want to talk about the force, the dark side of the force and the light side of the force, because I think this is somewhat telling as to where we are as a people, as a nation. And there are these two parts to the equation that we can work. And there are these two parts to our government. There's these two parts to us as individuals and what we experience. And I want to start by talking about the dark side, and talk about the what motivates that. And I want to give you 4 characteristics of the dark side, and then I want to talk about how these things work together. The first one that is a characteristic that you can identify whether particular decisions or policies are how they're made. The first one characteristic is pride. It's all about me. It's all about my nation, my race, my generation, my religion, my class. And we have an arrogance if we're operating according to that dark side. We have an arrogance that completely eliminates compassion. It precludes the very idea of compassionate acts, compassionate policies, compassionate gestures. And when that arrogance is all the way at the top, where the most important person in the entire world is believing that the role of government is to protect my nation, my race, my generation, my religion, then we end up with a very, very difficult situation. And so that's the first issue that is at stake. The second characteristic of the dark side is greed. And greed is at the very heart of capitalism. Greed is also at the very heart of nationalism, because it produces a mindset where the winner takes everything, where everybody loses except the winner, and I'm going to be a winner, so I'm going to be functioning out of my own desire to win at the cost of others. And ultimately, this creates an orgy of selfishness, which culminates in a concentration of wealth. You end up with a lot of people that are victimized by the system, and you end up with a few extremely wealthy people. The next characteristic that I want us to think about is the characteristic of fear. When you can see the dynamic of fear, you know that that there's just basically a darkness that is being propagated and is being used to motivate, to basically weaponize fear. Is a weapon that's used to control people's behavior and to consolidate power. And what we see is this fear being weaponized in the form of propaganda, which always bears a hidden agenda. There's always an end goal for propaganda. So real news is to inform and educate, whereas propaganda is to obscure the truth and control behavior by using fear. And what we've seen as a result of the unbounded fear that's been released on our society, what we see is a sharp decline in mental health and a sharp rise in both addiction and suicide. I mean, you look at the graphs of these things, and it's very alarming. And so we are at a place where we need to address the fear that is being propagated in our society, and we need to just end it. We need to say, this is enough. We will go no further down this path. And then the last is a call to arms. When this darkness rolls over a society, ultimately it results in a call to arms. And I want you to think about Germany in the 1930s. Everybody in the world could see that there was a war coming. Everybody could see that Hitler was evil. And he was systematically weaponizing the fears of the people to produce a hatred for all of those that would hold the German people down and keep Germany from being great again. And so we have seen a distinct rise in that in the last few years in the United States. And as I've read quite a bit about Germany in the 30s, and the parallels are absolutely chilling to me. And I can see what the end game is, and it's not one that we want to participate in. So enough of that stuff. That is really heavy stuff. So I want to talk about the light side of the force, because this is the place where I want to live. So humility is, in my view, the ability to address and admit the hard truths. It's the ability to understand that we are not king of the universe, that we live in a world that needs to be welcoming to all people, where we need to take a lesser piece of the pie so that we can benefit everyone else. And so the ability to be humble is the ability to be open and to understand and to embrace these painful truths. And it's required, absolutely required, for taking any kind of positive action. We need to begin to trust one another and to welcome each other in to be part of the solution together. The second thing that I think is vital to our health as a people and as a society, as a nation, is that we have to restore faith. Somehow we have to believe that it's going to work out. We have to trust our leaders, and we must seek to build and not destroy. What we've seen is a systematic destruction of so many of our institutions, and so much of the trust that has been invested in the government. And we've seen such a diminished presence on the world stage. And we've got to end that. We've got to start building. And it begins by having faith that that somehow it's all going to work, and we are going to be a part of it working, and that we are overlooking one another's the differences that we have with one another in order to construct a future that we all want to live in. And this results in hope. Hope is a belief that we can build the world that we want to live in, and that the world will be brighter in the future because we'll all come together. I have a dream, and that dream is really the American dream. It's also the dream that Martin Luther King Jr. Spoke of, where everyone lives together and everyone's value is not based on the color of their skin or their age group or their race or their culture. Their value as human beings is based on the ability to build a better world together. And that's the dream that I have. And that's what gives me hope, because I think that a lot of other people share that same dream. Hope is absolutely essential to motivation. We're not going to get very far unless we have hope. And when hope is removed by fear and hate, when hope is removed, it destroys everything. And that's what we're seeing with the outbreaks in mental health and suicides, is that people are just losing hope. And people don't believe that the world is going to be better, and they don't believe that they have a role in that world becoming better. And that's what I'm hoping to restore. And then ultimately, we must act out of love. We must act out of a basic kindness and compassion. We must care for people. And equality and inclusion are essential to our survival. And without that, the lack of those things, when we have exclusivity and we have inequality, those things are a manifestation of the lack of love that is in our society. We must restore this if we are going to survive as a people. Okay, so here's my challenge to you. Move from the dark to the light. And this is what this looks like. I want to offer a challenge to you to select 3 different things, 3 actions that you can take. These actions, I'm not even going to suggest what those actions should be. I'm not going to tell you what my actions are, but I will say that I have committed to 3 specific actions that I am going to do that are doable and that will make a difference in the world. And so I want you to select those actions that match your personality and your opportunity. Pick things that apply to your strengths and your passions, and write them down and make a commitment to yourself that you will do these 3 things. Whoops, hit the wrong key. Okay, then I want you to think about what you can do today, this week, and this month. And I want you to commit to one of these 3 things, to make a step on it today, and and another of those 3 things I want you to put into a week time frame. And then the third one I want you to put into a month time frame. Now, what this does for us is it allows us to think at 3 different levels of complexity. Your daily task might just be to call someone and encourage them. Your weekly task might be something larger than that, that requires, maybe 2 or 3 hours of effort. Your monthly task might be something much larger than that, that may require a day or 2 of effort in order to accomplish it. So I want you to be thinking about your good deeds and your positive actions. I want you to be thinking about that in 3 unique timeframes and 3 unique cost levels, so that you're planning to do some small kindnesses, you're planning to do some major challenge to existing systems, or to build something of importance to someone else. And so I want you to begin thinking at different scales simultaneously. And this is my challenge to you. 3 things, 3 time frames, and then make it happen. And the next piece of this challenge is do it now and do it again. Do it simply, but do it immediately. And that gets you going. It gets us out of this mindset that we have to do it glorious and we never get to it. Instead, act now and act simply. And then when you're done, do it all over again. Think lifestyle. Make a small change to your lifestyle to accommodate additional kindness, or to accommodate additional preparations for the challenges that lie ahead, or to accommodate different resiliency in your character so that you can respond to the challenges that you're about to face. And then build on your success. Once you've made a small lifestyle change, keep extending that, but do it over again. Think consistency is more important than intensity. And then finally, I want to leave you with this idea. Make change a complete lifestyle. Just get used to the idea that we live in a world that requires us to change constantly. We must adapt. We must look at the situations that arise, and we must look at our neighborhoods, and we must look at our neighbors and see, what can I do to help in this time? Improvement is an attitude more than an action. Doing actions is great, but if you have an attitude, that will produce an infinite stream of actions, and that's much more important. So become the change you want to see. And I just want to leave you with this one final thought. Everyone has influence, and you can influence those around you. Thank you.